Silver investors, the United States government literally modeled this exact Mexico disaster as a national security level threat. 3 months ago, the scenario is now live on the ground. 24% of global mine supply is running through blockaded highways and off-market deals, and COMEX closed down 95 cents. That is not the market pricing the risk. That is the market not understanding the risk yet, and the gap between those two does not stay open forever. Segment 1. They killed the most powerful cartel boss on a Sunday. They did not do this on a Tuesday during live trading. They did it on a Sunday, with markets closed, futures dark, and no price discovery possible. By the time silver opened Monday morning, the power vacuum in Mexico was already 24 hours old. Roadblocks were already up across nearly 20 states. The highways that carry Mexican silver to U.S. ports and border crossings were already shut. The U.S. market had a full session today with all of that information on the table. Silver closed at $87.13, down 95 cents on the day. The world's largest silver-producing country loses the one man holding its most powerful criminal organization together. Retaliation spreads across almost 20 states within hours. Silver transport routes are physically blocked, and the futures market goes down. That is not the market processing the news. That is the market not understanding what the news means yet. Tonight is Monday, February 23, 2026. The U.S. session is closed. In a matter of hours, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Shanghai, the world's largest physical silver markets, open for the first full session since El Mencho's death. That's the moment we're walking toward. Segment 2. What Washington already told you in November. This story did not start on Sunday. It started in November 2025. In November, the U.S. Geological Survey did something it has never done before. It officially added silver to the U.S. critical minerals list for the first time in history. That list is not a formality. It is the same national security framework that governs strategic petroleum reserves, rare earth stockpiles, military-grade material supply chains. To put silver there, USGS identified silver as essential to solar panels, electronics, semiconductors, defense applications, ran specific economic modeling, not generalities. In that modeling, they constructed one scenario. Mexico stops exporting silver to the United States. Not reduced exports, not market disruption, stopped. The conclusion: that single event would cause a GDP decline large enough to cross the national security threshold. Now put the basic math on the table. 70% of all silver consumed in the U.S. is imported. More than half of that imported silver comes from Mexico. That means over 35% of total U.S. silver consumption comes from one country with one land border. More than a third of the silver that goes into American solar, American electronics, American semiconductors, American medical devices, American defense hardware, the U.S. government, modeled a Mexico cutoff, classified it as a national security risk, put silver on the critical minerals list, and then watch the paper market trade around 80 cents a dollar. Today, the exact scenario they modeled is operationally relevant, and the futures market closed down 95 cents. Segment 3, the Vizsla kidnappings. The crisis started a month ago. The current crisis did not begin on Sunday. It began on January 23rd. On January 23rd, 10th workers were abducted from Vizsla Silver's gated residential compound in Concordia, Sinaloa. Not random laborers, geologists, engineers. Security guards, administrative staff, the technical professionals a mine cannot function without. They were taken from inside a secured residential facility built by a publicly listed mining company specifically to keep its people safe. Since then, 5 of those 10 have been found dead. 5 remain missing. Cartels did not stumble on these workers at an unguarded site. They penetrated a gated compound, removed staff from inside, and disappeared them. The industry response: immediate security upgrades across the sector. But the numbers tell you those security costs were something else. In public disclosures, some of the new line items were community benefit programs, local contractor requirements, regional infrastructure contributions. The vocabulary is corporate. The arrangement is extortion. On top of that, Vizsla's attack triggered a personnel crisis. Geologists and engineers began leaving the worst affected regions. Families told them, "Come home. We're not waiting for a corporate security review." A silver mine without geologists and engineers does not produce silver. The ore is still in the ground. The machines are still on site, but the human knowledge needed to run a complex operation is walking out. That was the situation before Sunday, before the power vacuum. Segment 4, Sunday. El Mencho killed. 20 states light up. Highways shut on Sunday, February 22nd. Mexican military forces carried out a high-level operation in Tapalpa, Jalisco. Target: Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. During the firefight, El Mencho was wounded and died en route to Mexico City. This was not rumor. The White House confirmed the operation. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed U.S. intelligence support. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau confirmed the death on the record. El Mencho carried a $15 million U.S. government bounty, the largest active cartel bounty at the time. CJNG is widely recognized as the most powerful criminal organization in the Western Hemisphere. Here's what makes this a structural market event. El Mencho's son and presumed heir, El Menchito, was extradited to the U.S. and convicted in 2024. He is in a U.S. prison. There is no viable family successor. This is not a normal leadership transition with an heir stepping up. It's a power vacuum with no obvious internal resolution mechanism. Within hours of confirmation, coordinated retaliation spread across nearly 20 Mexican states. Puerto Vallarta, a major tourism hub, became a flashpoint. Armed groups set up roadblocks on key arterial roads. Buses and trucks were torched. Hotels locked guests inside under de facto shelter-in-place conditions. Flights were canceled, airports temporarily shut. In Guadalajara, Mexico's second-largest city, streets emptied, schools were canceled across multiple states on Monday. Now the detail almost no financial coverage is talking about. The highways blockaded on Sunday are the silver supply chain, the primary trucking routes that move ore and refined silver from producing states to ports and U.S. border crossings run through the exact geography that was shut down. Silver movements across those regions have been halted, not slowed. The arteries of commerce that carry Mexico's silver to the world were physically closed by armed groups before the night was over. And this isn't a one-day event. A power vacuum with no successor does not produce peace. It produces fragmentation. Lieutenants contest territory. Rival cartels advance. Every revenue stream, trucking lane, border crossing, and mine becomes contested ground. That process resolves in months or years, not days. Every day it continues, Mexico's contribution to global silver supply is further impaired. Segment 5, how miners have already changed the way silver moves. Even before Sunday, Mexican miners had fundamentally changed how metal moves. Key shifts since the Vizsla attack: refined bars are off the roads. Pure refined silver bars are no longer being transported through standard channels across the worst affected regions. They're too valuable and too recognizable. After the Vizsla attack, transport insurance for refined bars became unobtainable in those states. When insurers stop writing coverage, that's their way of saying the risk is uninsurable at any rational price. Or instead of bars, rather than smelting and shipping bars, operations are now loading raw ore into trucks. To the eye, it looks like ordinary dirt. No obvious theft target, no visible immediate value. But this changes the economics deeply. Lower value per ton transported, higher processing costs at destination, longer lead times from extraction to market-ready metal, off-market industrial deals. Some producers have gone one step further. They are structuring private deals directly with major industrial end users, big tech and manufacturing companies. Those buyers arrange their own logistics, use air freight or even militarized logistics, move silver directly from mine to factory, bypassing the public market and exchange delivery entirely. Think Samsung-scale buyers. They have the capital and operational capacity to pull silver out of Mexico through private channels. Every ounce that moves that way does not go to COMEX, does not show up as available metal for futures delivery. This is why COMEX warehouse data looks the way it does right now. Segment 6, COMEX vaults. Withdrawals without replenishment. COMEX registered silver inventories have been consistently draining without the usual replenishment flows. Normally, metal leaves registered inventories for all kinds of reasons, but new bars arrive to keep inventories at functional levels. Right now, that inflow has dried up. Why? Because a meaningful portion of the silver that typically goes to COMEX starts as Mexican production, and Mexican silver is not moving as refined bars, is locked behind uninsurable routes and blockades, is being routed through private off-market logistics. The inventory decline that was already underway is now being acutely aggravated by Sunday's escalation, and the timing makes this dangerous. The March COMEX silver contract is approaching. March is a major delivery month. Longs who stand for delivery expect physical bars to be available in registered warehouses. If inventories keep falling and new supply doesn't show up, the mechanism that turns paper into metal comes under stress the current price does not reflect. That is the mechanical link between a gunfight in Jalisco and the number on your silver chart: warehouse levels, delivery demand, and metal that was supposed to flow from Mexico into the exchange system, but now isn't. Segment 7, 3 direct scenarios and the Colombia template. The video lays out 3 clear scenarios for how this could unfold, plus a 4th, slower one. Systematic economic extraction, taxation, not shutdown. Cartels evolve from opportunistic violence to structured taxation. Mines continue to operate, but Protection fees become embedded in community programs and local contracts. Informal transit taxes hit ore trucks. Technical staff retention requires risk premiums. Result, less metal reaches market at higher cost with longer delays. Disruption cascade during succession conflict. What's already visible. Power vacuum triggers multi-state territorial fighting. Highways become contested ground. Workers don't show up. Expats get evacuated. Trucks can't move. Mines don't formally suspend operations. They simply stop functioning because every input, labor, fuel, explosives, security, is disrupted at once. Visla's share price is already down more than 50%, reflecting market fears that temporary disruption could be quarters-long impairment. Full structural capture, the most dangerous succession conflict, spreads into the core silver belt, Zacatecas, Durango, Chihuahua, Sinaloa. If that distributed geography is simultaneously destabilized, Mexico's 190 million ounces per year, 24% of global mine supply, doesn't drop by 10%. It drops by a number the current price has no mechanism to express without a violent repricing event. Colombia, Congo, Afghanistan template. Slow, sophisticated capture. Legal operators are squeezed by security risk plus regulatory complexity. Cartel-linked intermediaries infiltrate community consent frameworks, local contractor requirements, compliance regimes. The mines stay legal on paper, but control and economics drift into criminal hands, just like gold districts in Colombia, cobalt, tantalum zones in DRC, lithium regions in Afghanistan. Mexico has every precondition for this pattern. Violence already at penetrate a secured compound and kill workers levels before the vacuum, complex politics and regulation, enormous economic incentive, controlling even a slice of the world's largest silver producer at 87,100 Oz easily justifies multi-year cartel investment. The paper market can't price regulatory infiltration probability. There's no options column for that, which is exactly why this risk is absent from the current price. Segment 8. Who really pays when the silver doesn't show up? The people who truly bear this cost are not futures traders. By the numbers, 70% of U.S. silver consumption is imported. More than half of that comes from Mexico. That means American solar panel manufacturers, American electronics producers, American semiconductor fabs, American defense contractors are structurally dependent on supply that is running through blockaded highways, being diverted into private logistics, or literally sitting in an ore truck waiting for a route to open. And silver is not optional in these applications. Utility scale and residential solar require silver for conductivity. There's no industrial scale substitute ready on any realistic timeline. EVs need silver for contacts, battery systems, thermal management. Medical devices rely on silver's antimicrobial and electrical properties. Any substitute would need years of recertification. These are physical production requirements, not financial positions. When contracted silver at subspot prices doesn't arrive, manufacturers don't just tweak spreadsheets. They halt production or rush into spot at 87 plus and take the hit across the entire cost structure. If that contracted supply is now in off-market private deals, or in ore that isn't moving, or in mines that can't operate normally, those companies are forced to compete in a thinner, more expensive spot market, or cut output and explain it away on earnings calls with bland language about supply chain optimization and delivery schedule adjustments. The risk is already materialized in dead workers, missing staff, uninsurable routes, non-replenished COMEX vaults, halved Visla stock. The futures market is treating the probability-weighted cost as zero. Segment 9, how markets price disruption, wheat, nickel, and what 24% means. If you want to see how this usually ends, look at recent history. When Russia invaded Ukraine and removed roughly 10% of global wheat exports, wheat futures spiked about 40% within weeks, as the market tried to price both the immediate loss and the forward uncertainty all at once, after months of treating the risk as remote. When Indonesia restricted nickel exports, nickel, a metal with multiple producers and active recycling, doubled in price within months. Now apply that framework. Mexico produces 190 million ounces of silver per year, 24% of global mine supply. Global silver is already in a 100 million ounce annual structural deficit. COMEX vaults are not being replenished. This disruption is not a reversible policy choice like a tariff. It is a leaderless power vacuum triggering multi-state conflict. There is no precedent for a 24% supply source entering an acute power vacuum in a deficit market with documented inventory depletion and U.S. confirmation of direct operational involvement, and the U.S. futures market getting a full session to react and closing down 95 cents. Markets don't gradually price this kind of risk. They ignore it. Then they price it violently and all at once. The question for silver is not whether Mexico risk gets priced. It's when and how quickly once the dam breaks. Segment 10. 3 signals to watch from here. So how will you know when the gap between reality and $87 starts to close? The video gives you 3 concrete signals. Geographic depth into the silver belt. Retaliation already hit nearly 20 states. That's breadth. The key is whether sustained conflict penetrates. Zacatecas, Durango, Chihuahua, Sinaloa. These 4 comprise the core silver belt. Watch regional security reporting there like you'd watch a pipeline shutdown in a major oil exporter. Operational announcements from producers. Any press release mentioning temporary suspension, workforce evacuation, force majeure, enhanced security reviews, or logistics adjustments. One formal announcement from one big name changes how the market views all operators in that geography. The Asian Open tonight, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai. First full price discovery in physical heavy markets since El Mencho's death. If silver gaps higher on significant volume without a matching move in gold, that's the clearest signal the market is specifically pricing Mexican supply risk, not just broad metal sentiment. If Asia opens flat or down, the disconnect between physical reality and paper price grows wider, and the eventual adjustment becomes more violent. Right now, none of these signals is flashing red, which means either the market is correctly betting this resolves quickly without major supply impact, or the clock is still running. Tonight's Asian session is the first real test, segment 11. The whole picture and what $87 isn't telling you. As of tonight, Monday, February 23rd, 2026, silver closed at $87.13, down 95 cents on the day. That price reflects none of the following documented facts. USGS added silver to the critical minerals list in November, explicitly modeling a Mexico disruption as a national security level GDP hit. 70% of U.S. silver is imported, more than half from Mexico. On January 23rd, 10th Vizsla workers, geologists, engineers, security, were abducted from a secured compound. 5 dead, 5 missing. In response, miners stopped shipping refined bars. Transport insurance is unobtainable in affected regions. Miners are shipping ore that looks like dirt instead of bars. Value per ton down, lead times up, costs shifted down the chain. Major industrial end users have set up off-market, armed logistics deals to pull silver directly from producers. That metal never touches COMEX. COMEX vaults are not being replenished. March delivery is approaching. On Sunday, a joint operation killed El Mencho, CJ&G's boss, with confirmed U.S. intelligence support and no clear successor. Retaliation hit nearly 20 states, including major cities like Guadalajara and tourist hubs like Puerto Vallarta. Highways that carry silver to ports and borders were blockaded. Movements across those regions halted. Global silver has run a 100 million ounce annual structural deficit for 3 years. Mexico provides 24% of global mine supply. There is no incremental production elsewhere capable of replacing a serious Mexican shortfall within this market cycle. Every comparable commodity disruption in modern history has been priced suddenly and violently after months of risk denial. There is no precedent for a disruption of this magnitude, getting a full U.S. trading session and closing red. That is what $87 is not telling you tonight. You've been watching John A.G. here, and I'm OG John A.G. If this helped you see why the U.S. government, the mine workers, the insurance market, COMEX inventories, and Mexican equities have all been screaming national security level silver risk, while the paper price yawned, hit like so this doesn't get buried, smash subscribe with all notifications on, and drop a comment. Mexico 24%. How does the market price this? Tell me which of the 3 signals you're watching most closely, geographic depth, mine announcements, or the Asian Open, and why. Because on this channel, we don't wait for Wall Street to explain a 40% spike after it happens. We study supply chains, state power, and warehouses before the repricing hits.